Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men, shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where my intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models in mainstream media. So my intention is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. Because if you pay attention to mainstream media, you may conclude that all Black men live in the hood and are trapped in poverty, are uneducated, and want to be gangsters and rappers. But nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is, Black men are thriving and experiencing unprecedented levels of success in all segments of society. And my guest tonight is going to be sharing two things that I am absolutely passionate about and also confirms how we are thriving. And those two things are writing and traveling. His name is Leroy Adams, and he is a world traveler, a writer, and the publisher of the travel magazine, Culture Travel. I was intrigued by his profile on LinkedIn where he wrote, "I think, write, and talk about Black travel," which I loved. And that was one of the reasons why I reached out to the brother and say, "Look, man, you need to come on my podcast." So he is definitely a man who's shattering stereotypes, and it is my absolute honor and privilege to have him join me on this podcast. So hello, Leroy, how are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you for that awesome introduction. This is such a pleasure, man, to meet you and to be here to chat.
All right. Again, we're gonna have a ball because, like I said, we're talking about two of my favorite passions, and you do both very well. So
Thank
again,
you.
I'm really looking forward to it. So before we jump into it, though, let's start off with a few icebreakers.
Okay.
So first of all, tell us where you're from and give us a little background about what it was like growing up for you.
So yeah, that question of where I'm from is always difficult for a traveler, right? You've spent you spent so much time in so many different places, and places really define who we are, and people really define who we are. So it's always a bit of a challenge for me. But for the sake of the question, I claim Miami. I spent that's where I lived most of my childhood. Miami raised me, shaped me in many ways. And but halfway through high school, moved to Fort Myers, Florida, which also played a significant part in my rearing, how I grew up, how I saw the world. And then from there, really just bounced around from different places and cities, countries, and what have you.
Got it. So name a woman who's inspired you to be who you are.
My mother, my mother, I was literally thinking about that today. I was maybe 30 minutes ago. My mom, man, she is, and she doesn't even know it, right? But she taught me resiliency, hard work, dedication, and I always contribute my ability to smile and just see joy in the world to my mother because I just always saw her smile. And and what I have to remind myself is that behind closed doors, right, she probably was carrying her own weight of the world. And so again, she taught me how to show up, be joyful, but also protect yourself when needed to.
Mm.
Oh man, just everything that I am has to do with my mother. So there is no other answer I can give for that question.
Well, it sounds like we have the same mom.
I don't know. So I wish
Quite,
everyone had the type of mom that I
quite literally. I mean, I would say the exact same things about my mom. So name a man that you look up to and admire.
have. There's a couple there. There's a couple. My stepfather, who's no longer with us, taught me what it meant to take care of your business and your family, even when you didn't feel like it, even when you didn't get praise for it, even when you had to do the dirty work that no one wants to do. It's you are man, it's your responsibility. Show up, take care of business. And one thing he always taught me was if you're going to start something, finish it.
Mm.
And I've always tried to live by that principle, always tried to live by that principle. I haven't always lived up to it, but I've always strived for that principle. Um, when I was in high school, there was a teacher named Mr. Middlebrooks who wasn't even my teacher, but
Wow.
I could just sit in his classroom and chat, talk about all of the things, women, marriage, sports, grades, how to
Nice.
show up in the world as a young man. So when I think about it, those two specifically, my stepfather and Mr. Middlebrooks.
Got it. Now, do you like movies?
I love movies. I'm a movie buff.
Name
Absolutely
one,
love them.
name one of your favorite ones.
I bet you probably never heard of it too.
Hmm.
Finding Forrester.
I love that movie.
Really?
Absolutely.
Man, listen, that is my favorite scene in that movie is when he is educating the white man who owns the BMW. Remember, he clicks it and he locks
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I love that scene where he's with the teacher and he's correcting the teacher, and the teacher's getting pissed off because
Get
he's
him pissed off.
you remember
Get
that
out.
scene? Yeah,
My favorite movie.
great movie, great movie. Now, what would a perfect day look like for Leroy?
A perfect day, uh, almost felt like today, if I'm honest. I woke up about 4 o'clock, got in here, did some writing, did some meditating with my fiance, and just that start to the day, that clarity, that release, that setting the tone for the rest of the day was so uplifting and spiritual, if you will. And got out into the world, connected with people, looked for new ideas, allowed things to just sort of come to me. And so I guess what I'm getting at is a perfect day for me is starting slow, getting out into the world, interacting with people, seeing how they're responding to what's happening in their life and sort of people watching
Yeah.
and taking notes as I go, ideas for stories and things like that. I promise you, my fiance will probably tell you that 10 times out of the day, I'm like, that's a story. Because everything I see and experience just feels like a story to me. So a really perfect day is just existing and allowing life to happen and then allowing stories to come to me in that manner. I don't have to really do much and be too active, but just exist and be.
Yeah. Now, a couple of things I love about that. First of all, having that special person in your life.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, especially as Black men, I think we sometimes forget how important that is.
Yes, sir.
I think for me, again, I've been blissfully married for 23 years and just absolutely love and adore my wife. I mean, I just love having her in my life.
Yeah.
And as a writer like yourself, I'm always seeing stories, and I, I keep my phone close, and I'll have an idea for a book, and
Same.
I'll make a little note. I'll make a little note and come back to that later. So that's
Same.
kind of the creative process. It just starts hitting you, and I got to take notes, and eventually I follow up. So I love that.
One piece of it, I get married in March, real quick. I got engaged last year. I get married in
Yay!
March. One piece of it, you're 23 years. What one piece of advice?
make your marriage high priority. Mm. We sometimes unknowingly unknowingly don't realize that we're not making our relationship top priority in our lives because we're working and we're accumulating stuff and we're living dreams or whatever. But I have come to know after my relationship with my higher self, my higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, and my wife comes second. She comes before all the writing, all the speaking, all the coaching. That's secondary. When I come home, it's my sanctuary. I have this person that I absolutely adore, and I always put her first. So that's what I would say. Prioritize your marriage.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So now I want to give you an opportunity to, in your own words, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey everyone, my name is Leroy Adams. I grew up in Miami. I am the publisher and founder of Culture Travels Magazine, actually Culture Travels Media. We do publish a print and digital travel magazine, in addition to building out what is eventually transforming into an ecosystem of media content that documents Black travel and culture around the world in various forms. I am a movie buff. Love them. I love to read. I'm currently reading For the Culture by Marcus Collins, and I recommend it to everyone. Such a wonderful book and really breaks down the construction of culture. I also recommend real quick a book I just finished reading, Maya Angelou's All God's Children Deserves Traveling Shoes. Excellent, excellent piece on her life in Ghana. I love, obviously here I love to travel. I've lived in about 4 different countries, traveled to about 25 different countries. My favorite country, and people are always going to ask me this. I'm pretty sure we'll get to this in the podcast. I always tell people Ethiopia has a special place in my heart because that's where I did the Peace Corps.
Nice.
Love to cook, which is why my fiance loves me. I think that's one of the reasons why she said yes, because I love to cook. I love to cook for her. I am not that complex as I think most people will come to learn through this podcast. Give me a good book, give me a ticket to a new destination, give me some space, and I am a happy man.
Nice. Well, my wife said she married me because I can fix stuff. Because I can fix stuff. So we're gonna be talking about travel. So before I jump into my questions, I want to share a couple of pics that you sent.
Okay.
Let's see here. Da, 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 da. All right. So we'll begin with your magazine you mentioned.
Yeah.
So here's Cultural Travels, which is your online digital mag. Is it also in print also?
It is. It is also in print. Yes, sir.
Sweet. So again, we're going to be talking a little bit, but I want to just kind of pop up a couple of pictures and kind of get your feedback where you were and what you were doing. Okay, I recognize these folks. What's up with that?
That is Ireland. For those who don't know, there is such rich Black history in Ireland. I know we're looking at the Obamas here. I was traveling to the Moher Cliffs, and we stopped at the Barack Obama Plaza halfway through between Dublin and the Moher Cliffs, and I'm like, what in the world is this? And apparently, Obama has ancestry in Ireland. His great-great-grandfather, I believe, was Irish. The Irish love the Obamas. The Irish, in many ways, had their struggle, if you will, their liberational struggle mirrors that of Black Americans here in the U.S. in terms of what they went through with the British. And so they share a lot of similarities with us. And so they have such high praise for the Obama, such high praise for Black Americans. Frederick Douglass as well has such rich history in Ireland, spent a lot of time there giving anti-slavery speeches. There's a ton of statues of Frederick Douglass in Ireland. But that is the Barack Obama Plaza that I had a chance to visit while I was there. And it was just such a cool experience, man, to see that and then to learn that history and that connection between Irish and Black Americans.
But see, This is why we should travel.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, the
Mhm.
first thought you think, for me, think of Ireland.
Mhm.
I don't think of black folk.
No, you don't.
It's like you just don't, you
And
know.
I was the same way, it's like, I won't see anybody that looks like me or shares my cultural experience in Ireland. And then I get there and there's Frederick Douglass all over the place. There are the Obamas all over the place. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just reminded me of what, Malcolm X would teach me in his writings about just getting out there and traveling, and you see the similarities between Black people here and some of the other civil rights struggles and liberational struggles around the world.
Yeah, because I mean, just watching that picture, I would say, okay, that's in US somewhere,
Right?
you know.
Is that Chicago? No, it ain't Chicago.
All right, here's our next pick.
Ah, that was, man, that's Colombia. I was going through such a difficult time in that part of my life. You won't even be able, you can't tell that in the picture, right? But before that trip, uh, I was just going through such a difficult time, going through a breakup. I believe the pandemic was sort of just now taking off. It was a lot. And I took a trip to Colombia with one of my close friends here, and we went to Minca, which was a village up in the mountains in Colombia. And we hiked down a river through the water. And we found a space there. And my friend, who's not pictured here, Alex, and our friend there, um, we we just got in the water and released all of the stress and the anxiety and the depression and the heaviness of everything that we were holding at that time in our lives, and just let it all go and let the water just wash it away, man. And it was such, as you can see in the picture, just so liberating, just so free.
Yeah, love that picture actually.
Also Colombia. Um, this is in Palenque. So Palenque was the first free African town, African population in South America,
Mm,
according to the history there. And so if you go to Colombia, about an hour outside of Cartagena, the capital of Colombia, you will find Palenque. And if we have some time here, I can pull up some more pictures, but there is an African population there that has their own language, own culture,
wow.
own style of dance, food culture, the whole, you name it, and they're existing there. And it's sort of evolving into this tourist attraction, which has its pros and cons. And one of the pros is that obviously the community there gets to sustain itself through tourism.
Hmm.
The other con is the con is what will Western tourism influence? What sort of impact will it have on that community over time? That's something that we often talk about in the travel space and often concerned about. But that picture that you're looking at there, the community painted that when George Floyd was murdered, Breonna Taylor was murdered, Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, and the Black Lives Matter movement kicked off, and we saw how it reverberated around the world. It also touched the people in Palenque, and you would go there and you see all sort of Black Lives Matter um, murals or murals of civil rights leaders. And so I just had to take a picture there and share that story with our followers and audience.
That's awesome. Love it.
Also Palenque. So this is some of the Palenque people you see in the picture. And when you get there, you get a chance to just sort of dance with them, have fun with them, even play some of the instruments with them. And so they pulled me in and they had me on the drums. And it was just such a wonderful time, man. And again, just experiencing that culture and learning this story of these people who, for all intents and purposes, have just sort of floated under the radar, but have been here the whole time as the first free African town in South America.
Wow.
This was Kenya. And one of the reasons I sent this picture is when people think about Africa in general, travel to Africa in general, there's always so many negative connotations. It's dangerous. It's it's not developed. It's not safe. And here I go to Kenya, and I'm here in Diani Beach, and it is the most beautiful paradise. And you
Mm.
can't see it from this picture, but this body of water is shaped as the African continent
Oh, wow.
naturally. It naturally shaped as the African continent. And the people in Diani, one of the ways they make money is when tourists come, they'll take them there because everyone wants to see it. And again, that's one of the things I'm happy that they have that as a source of income for their community. But it was just such a beautiful experience to have and to see the beauty of Africa um, during my time in Diani.
Now, approximately how big is that African shaped? I mean, just kind of for perspective, it's
I'd say so deep. I'd say it's about probably 8 feet deep.
okay.
Um, in terms of why, let me see.
So if you were up, I see this like this rock formation over here. So if you
Yeah,
were up, could you actually see the shape
you could
from?
see the shape.
Okay,
Absolutely. I
okay,
say it's about two to three pool sizes. You could see the shape as you're walking towards it.
okay.
uh, Ground level, you can see the
Oh,
shape
nice,
of the African continent. It's really, really beautiful. I'll
nice,
send you some of those pictures post this interview.
nice. Now, there's got to be a story. There got to be a story behind this. Got to be a story behind this.
So this is Ethiopia. And when people ask me, why did you start this company, this brand, Culture Travels? I always give them two stories. And one of them has to do with this picture here. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ethiopia, Black country, obviously, and I was about 6 months in, and I'm in my site, my town, which is called Endabagona. It's northern Ethiopia in the Tigray region, about 60 kilometers from the Eritrean border. I was the first American in my site, small town, first American. And so they all thought that I was Ethiopian until I opened my mouth. And one day I'm working with my Ethiopian colleagues in the teachers lounge. And one of my close friends, Kibro, says, Lodi, they could never pronounce my name correctly. They always said Lodi, not Leroy. Lodi, you don't walk like a Black American. And I said, what? Kibro, what does a Black American walk like? And so Kibro gets up and starts to walk like his pants are hanging off his butt. And so do the other Ethiopian teachers. And I asked them, where did y'all get that from? Where did y'all see that at? And they all point to the only TV we had in our teachers' lounge, this small box, black and white TV. And they start to describe, they say that, the guy with the long dread, and I didn't have locks at the time, the long hair and the diamond teeth. I'm like, Little Wayne? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, y'all, not everybody walks like that. Not all Black Americans walk like that. Little Wayne probably doesn't walk like that naturally, but he has an image to uphold. And so that happened. And literally, Michael, a week later, different different city, different people, new story. I'm on a bus. As you can see, the ticket there says transport. I'm on an Ethiopian bus. And the person who handles the ticket exchange asked me for my name. The Ethiopian asked me for my name. And I said, Lordy, but he couldn't get it. And so obviously there's a language barrier there. He looks down, scribbles something on the ticket, looks up, gives me the ticket, and he writes Little Wayne on it. And I could not believe that again. In a different city, different people, new story, but he still saw me as Lil Wayne.
Wow.
Taught me. In that moment, I knew that I was not the author of my story. I was not the author of how my identity was shaped outside of the US.
Wow.
And that told me, okay, I know I want to do something to help redefine the Black image in the broader world. And that begun my quest to start something like Culture Travels.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned, a lot of us have a perception, Kenya, all the negatives that you mentioned. That's kind of how we see them. And
Uh-huh.
then there they are seeing us as all little Waynes.
As all little
And that's why I said in my introduction, they think we're gangsters and rappers,
pieces and rappers and all athletes and it's
Yeah,
no.
exactly. Exactly. Great story, but still kind of sad, right? It's like,
Yeah,
come on, guys. All right. So just want to share some of those pictures. And again, thank you for sharing those with me.
absolutely.
It obviously sets the context for our conversation. I wanted to, again, just kind of ask you a couple of questions because, again, I love traveling. And I think everybody should travel outside of their own country.
Absolutely.
At least once. At least once, right? Just go. So I'm curious, and you've kind of answered this question, but I want you to be kind of specific. So, what inspired you to begin traveling the world? I
Mm.
mean, and what has your overall experience as a
Uh,
Black man navigating different countries and cultures? How has that impacted you?
my inspiration to travel came from what we would refer to as Black radical leaders, Black revolutionary leaders, Black intellectuals. Um, Malcolm X, reading his autobiography and learning about what his experience traveling to Mecca did,
Mm,
how that transformed his ideology on culture, on race, on Islam, on religion as a whole. And then him encouraging us to get out there and see the world. And one quote from him that it just sticks with me is him telling us that the Black civil rights movement is not a domestic US movement. It has to be an international movement
mm,
because that's where we're going to get our allyship. That's where we're going to get our freedom. That's where we're going to get our justice. Marcus Garvey, him starting the Black Star Line and trying to help us understand the importance of global economies and conducting trade and business and traveling between not just the African continent, but also the Caribbean, Black Europeans as well. Um, I know he's sometimes he can be unpopular depending on who you ask. But Dr. Umar Johnson was one of the first people, just watching some of his YouTube videos when I was in high school. He was one of the first people that told me get to the African continent, have that experience. James Baldwin, who's one of my favorite writers, him traveling to Switzerland and having that experience as a Black man in Switzerland where he wrote his first novel, Go Tell It on the Mountain. Maya Angelou traveling. I didn't grow up in a family of travelers. I was the first person in my family to have a passport. So reading really encouraged me and pushed me to get out there and see the world. And so when I was in college, my junior year, and I'm walking through a hallway and I see a flyer for a study abroad trip to Taiwan, I said, you know what? I want to do that. And it just so happened to be attached to a creative writing course. And
mm,
a quick story about that just getting to that trip was a struggle in itself. And I always share this because people um, oftentimes will allow challenges and blocks and or blockades and trials to get in the way of what is for us. And so when I decided to do that study abroad trip to Taiwan, I made it all the way through the course, did excellent in the creative writing class, and the school gave me some funding, but not it didn't cover all of my expenses. And so I remember walking into my professor's office and handing him a check for $1,000, thinking I had paid for this trip. I'm going to Taiwan. And he looks at me very kindly and says, Leroy, you have $1,000 left to pay. I had already had 2 jobs in school. I was not, coming for money. I left the office crying, called my mom, who did not want me to go, by the way. And, like mothers do, son, we'll put the family together, we'll do it. I said, no, mom, I want to make this happen. So I picked up a third job, cut back my expenses, and I saved up the money and I paid my way to Taiwan. And that experience, I never looked back. I got back home and I looked for more ways to get out there into the world. And my sister said, do the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is for you. And so to answer your question about what has my experience been like traversing the world as a Black man, it has been complex. Africa, starting with there, was complex because I was after Taiwan, where people saw me as Kobe Bryant as an athlete, but then I'm also having conversations with Taiwanese people about Buddhism and like, why do you all believe in that? And then they're challenging my Christian ideology. I'm like, oh, well, okay. This is why I see the world this way. And this is why you all see the world this way. And then having that education and broadening my perspective on religion and culture in Taiwan, and then getting to the African continent and living in Ethiopia, I'm excited because I'm finally here. But then I also see how colonialism was still very much rampant, at least psychologically there, where I walk into a bank to withdraw some money and, which is common in Ethiopia where the power would often go out. And the bank teller tells me, well, the power is go out. We can't withdraw any money for you right now. But then my Cuban American colleague, not white, Cuban American colleague, walks into the same bank no less than 5 minutes after I left out. And the bank manager materializes out of nowhere.
Wow.
To serve him. And they withdraw money for him.
Wow.
And having to constantly be compared to my white counterparts in Ethiopia in certain circles. Oh, well, they speak the language better than you do, or they understand the culture better than you do. No, they don't. But because they're white, you think that way. You think that. So it was complex. China. Oh my gosh. I could go all day about China and how that shaped my view of business, culture, politics. Oh my gosh. And so I always tell people it's been complex. I've
Yeah.
had to give grace in many ways, but also demand my respect and my space in many ways as well. But complex in all aspects, but so transformative.
Yeah.
I grew up in the world. I
Mm.
spent most of my time traveling in my 20s and I grew up in the world. Every country that I've touched has influenced and informed how I see the world, how I walk through life. And so the person you see today is because of all of those travel experiences. I would not exchange any of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I read, I don't know if it was in one of your articles or in your magazine, but you mentioned an experience of a kid thinking you were chocolate.
Oh yeah, China.
You gotta share that story.
This is also how I essentially learned that I can be, or solidified the idea that I could be an entrepreneur. In Ethiopia, I started entrepreneurship where I built classrooms, learned how to put together a business plan and market it and promote it and seek funding and all of those things. But then I get to China, where I was hired as a teacher, and I'm 2 weeks in, and I'm teaching. I'm working with this company called EF, and I'm teaching. You can call them first graders, first grade Chinese students, and we're singing the ABCs, and I'm sitting down, and my student Apple gets up walks to the front of the class, and here I'm thinking she's coming to join me and singing the ABCs, but Apple licks me from my wrist to my elbow twice. And I was so confused. I was like, what is going on? Is this just something that little Chinese kids do? What is going on here? So I walk out of my class and I call a friend of mine, black guy who works at a different school in Beijing. Hey, are your students licking you? And he's like, yeah, bro, they think I'm made of chocolate. I'm like, what? So I hey, bro, I'll call you back. And I walked into my office, my Chinese, did any of you ask my Chinese colleagues, did any of you tell my students that I was made of chocolate? No, Lordy, we would never do such a thing. So turns out Apple's parents told her that I was a chocolate bear because Apple would always cry whenever she had to come into my classroom. She had never seen a dark-skinned person before, let alone had one as a teacher.
Wow.
And so I sat her parents down and again, going back to what I said earlier, I had to give grace in certain instances because that idea did not originate with Chinese people. Don't get me wrong, they have their own issues with colorism and racism and things of that nature.
Right.
But the idea of who Black people are, Black Americans are, did not originate with Chinese people. That was imported into China. And so I had to sit down and talk with them. Don't do that. I understand she's scared. I'm a teacher. I have the skills. I know how to handle this. And so after that experience, I started to talk with more Black expats, not just Black Americans in Beijing, Black Europeans, Caribbeans, Africans, other Black Americans, you name it. The Black community in Beijing was just eclectic and so beautiful and vibrant and diverse. But we're all having these similar experiences, getting passed over by taxis, being denied jobs because they think we're less intelligent than Russians, because apparently Russians speak English or can teach English better than Black people, even though it's not their first link. But again, it's just, again, whiteness, right? Whiteness is better no matter what context it exists in. And so my friend that I called that day, him and I started a brand called Black Gen, BLKGEN, which stood for Black Genius. And the whole idea was to create a space where people, especially Black expats, could share who they were, share their cultural heritage and identity through a creative lens, be that dance, spoken word, poetry, film, etc. And we ran that company for about a year and a half, organizing events throughout Beijing and Shanghai, even brought in some talent from the US to come and perform. And I remember, I'll never forget, some of the locals, Chinese people who attended those events would say, oh my gosh, I did not know how talented, how intelligent, how creative, how brilliant Black people are. Thank you for sharing this experience with me. So again, having to extend grace, but also come up with creative ways to tell the world who we really are.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, with that being said, so what advice would you give to the brothers out there who are hesitant about international travel because of potential racial bias and prejudice? What would you say to them?
Do it. You deal with racial bias here in the US every day.
Absolutely.
Violently. Violently.
Yeah.
There's one thing I'll give credit to other countries, especially those that I lived in. Even though I experienced racial bias and discrimination, I was never fearful of my life being taken away or my body being harmed. Never. And in China particularly, which is essentially a police thing. I mean, you see police everywhere. Every corner you see police, but I never felt unsafe physically. So do it. Because you get there and you realize, oh my gosh, yes, there's some racial bias here, but they love us. The cognitive dissonance that you go, like, oh my gosh, they love Black, because in the same place that I was licked, in the same place that I was told that I was not from the West, that I was not from the US, because I was black and I had a big nose and fat lips, and that's not what people from the West and from America look like. In the same place, I also walked into a club and it was Tupac night. All of the Chinese people were dressed up like Tupac. Just imagine a club full of Chinese people dressed with a nose ring and a band dressed up like Tupac, rapping Big Mama, rapping All Eyes on Me. It's the same place where Stephon Marbury, the former NBA Stephon Marbury, was given citizenship because of his impact on the game of basketball in that country. It's the same place where a lot of NBA players today now are conducting business and thriving. So do it because your life will forever be changed. And the last thing I'll add to that, you gain so much self-worth and confidence when you get out there and you're able to navigate different cultures and you see the influence that we, not just as Black people, but as Black men, have on the rest of the world. I have never felt so much pride than when I was out there traveling and seeing the influence that my culture, my music, my language, my writing, my athleticism, my intellect had on the rest of the world. And so when I got back home, I said, okay, I can do anything. I can create anything. I can be anything. I can navigate any space.
Yeah. It's amazing because I remember the first time I went to Germany and we're driving around, and my nephew is actually from Germany. So we're driving around. I said, dude, let's listen to some German music.
Yeah. Hey.
You can't find German music. Everything's American. It's all, you know, American. Yeah, everything's American. I was like, dude, let's listen to some German music. So he found one station that somewhat had a German, you know, I'm thinking like polka German, you know, polka.
Yeah.
You can't even find it. The influence that we have in the world, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, and I remember, so again, I'm from Corpus Christi. Okay. And back in the 70s, you know, late 60s, early 70s, we didn't even have Black radio stations in Corpus. Wow. If you want to listen to Black music, what I would do is I actually bought an antenna, put on our apartment so that I could pick up Houston. Because if I picked up Houston, I could pick up some Black radio stations.
Yeah.
And so I put my little antenna up, man, and I had my little Radio Shack stereo, and I'd make mixtapes, you know, Black music, and I always was the guy that I was a DJ actually in high school, so I always kept up with the latest music. But it's still amazing, as you were just saying, the influence that we've had around the globe, right? Yeah. And it's for me, it's inspiring. I get inspired, you know.
It is. It is. Yeah.
But I want to ask this though, because as a traveler, are there any destinations that you would say, maybe you don't want to go there? Have you any, I guess, have you had any bad experiences maybe in a place where you go,
this story is always somewhat difficult to share. Because one of the things I try to avoid is discouraging people from traveling to get in their own experiences. But I remember I spent about a month in India and I had a great time up until the last couple of days. And there was one experience in particular where I was on this, I had just got off a 33-hour train ride from Varanasi back to Mumbai. And I'm on the train and this Indian guy sits next to me. And he's asking me about my anatomy. And I'll leave that there.
Okay.
And I was like, what? And I was like, just obviously turned off but also curious. Why are you asking me about that? And so I pushed a little bit. And basically where we got to, he said, well, I heard I heard that Black men have big anatomies.
Right.
And I said, I have to remember again, we're not the author of our stories
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
global context.
Got it.
And so one of the things you will likely experience as a Black man is your body becoming a fetish and sexualized. And what's interesting is we always talk about this in the context of women, but we rarely talk about it within the context of men, particularly Black men. You will be sexualized, and you have to learn how to navigate that, right? And so that is probably the only negative experience or uncomfortable experience I'll perhaps say that I've had traveling. Even I've even had issues particularly in South Africa, with Black South Africans using the N word, and that's a whole nother story in itself.
Mm.
Going back and forth on that, right? But nothing has really compared to my body being sexualized in that way, and then people like asking me about it. It was like, I'm sure people in here in the US think about it, but no one has ever asked me about it in public like that. And so, younger Leroy was furious, but luckily I had the demeanor, if you will, to say, again, extending grace.
Yeah.
Standing.
Got it. So I'm curious. Again, you mentioned that you're engaged to be married. So is your fiance a traveler also?
She is, but I wouldn't say not as much as me. So she spent a lot of time. She's a military brat.
Ah, okay.
A lot of time in Okinawa. She traveled to Kenya last year. Um, so she does not have the travel track record that I do. But I will say this, and you and I were talking earlier about marriage and alignment on certain values. One of the reasons my previous relationship did not work out is because she was not a traveler.
Mm.
And that was difficult for us because obviously I am. And when I met my fiance, Shalea, and I was very frank and honest with her about my travel ambitions and joy and how I want to continue to do it and even move back abroad, she was all for it.
Wow.
She was so supportive. And that gave me so much more joy. I wanted to bend the knee then. That's it. So she is a traveler and she has become even more so through our relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, because actually, it wasn't a non-negotiable, but it was somewhat of a prerequisite for me because I'd gone through a divorce.
Mm.
I had been divorced for 15 years. Then decided, I did want to find my life partner. And so
Mm.
when I was in the pursuit of this partner, like I said, it was a prerequisite that you wanted to travel.
You wanted to travel.
And so, because my wife, my first wife, she just didn't get it. She just
Yeah.
didn't get it. And I'm not judging her. I made the mistake of not knowing how important travel was to me while I was married.
Mm.
Because I remember the first time I just said, look, let's take this cruise to Cancun. I mean, simple. Corpus Christi, Cancun, you know.
Right there.
She got all bent out of shape, didn't want to go, and that's just one of many problems. But my point is, when I decided I wanted to remarry, I needed to make sure that the person that I married would enjoy traveling
Yeah.
because I love it that much. I love the travel. I
Yeah.
mean, geez, my wife and I, we just got back from Norway a couple of weeks ago. We had a blast.
How
Yeah,
was that?
yeah, it was great, man, because I'm a big nature guy, right?
Yeah.
So, we took a cruise. We flew into Iceland, had 4 stops in Iceland, jumped over to Norway, had 4 stops in Norway, came down the coast, went to Belgium, which I never thought I would like Belgium, but I absolutely love Belgium. Then went down to Amsterdam and ended up in England. But it's a wonderful, wonderful trip. So, but yeah, just again, I just love traveling. And so, with that being said, I want to jump over real quickly to your site. I want to talk about a couple of things. I think this is important here. All right. So we're on your site. And let's see, I think it was here. Let's look here. Yeah. So this article, The Ultimate Guide to Travel Budgeting and Embrace the Shoulder Season for Affordable Adventures. Now, a lot of people, their first issue is, oh, that's too expensive. I don't want to, So, first of all, I'd never heard the term shoulder season. So, can you give us some tips, some hints, or some strategies, whatever that shoulder season means, so that we can create these affordable adventures?
Oh man, this is such a wonderful article. It was written by our finance writer, Chelsea Evans, who is also a mother. And so affordable travel is important to her and her husband, obviously. And shoulder season is essentially when tourism is at its lowest. So we always talk about off season or low season. It's essentially a synonym for shoulder season. And so you'll typically find where prices are lower um, for flights, for accommodations, um, you name it. And so it depends on where you're going, will determine, well, when is shoulder season, right? Or where is it happening? But I will say that it will typically happen around the fall. Why? Kids are in school. People are traveling. Kids are in school. Uh, university kids are in college. People are working back at their jobs, right? Summer is done. So typically between August and October-ish, you could bank on a shoulder season. And then right after New Year, maybe February to about April, you could bank on shoulder season. And that's where you're going to really get your bang for your buck. And one of the reasons I encourage people to pursue travel around those times, if they have the means to do so, is because, again, not only will prices be relatively lower than they would normally be during a higher season, but when you get to a destination, it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
really just you. And so you get to experience all of the local culture, all of the experiences, all of the attractions without the crowdedness of other tourists being there as well. And so really, really encourage people to look at travel or between August again to October. And destinations will tell you this as well. A lot of them will encourage travel during that time. Why? Especially if it's a destination that relies on tourism.
Mm-hmm.
It's slowed down, so that means business has slowed down for them, which is negatively impacting their local economies. And so I would always encourage people, shoulder season, and again, uh, literally just putting in shoulder season Brazil will give you some information in terms of when is shoulder season for Brazil, where I'm going to get my best experience for my spending, um, where to go, how to do it, things of that nature. So this was a really important piece. Actually, matter of fact, this is a piece where we'll continue to produce this throughout every season of the year. Because again, depending on where you're going, shoulder season could be almost any time of the year.
Yeah. And again, I'm an optimist. That's the lens through which I see the world.
Yeah.
And because of two words, this is why I'm so optimistic: technology and information.
Mm-hmm.
We now have access to the technology and information. We can no longer say, I can't, because my mom taught me this lesson when I was about 10. I'll never forget. She says, Michael, if you want something badly enough, There's no one or no thing that can keep you from attaining it except yourself.
Except yourself.
And I'll never forget that lesson. Like I said, I was probably 10. And it is that lesson that has allowed me to far exceed what society says a young black dude with only an 11th grade education could accomplish.
Wow.
Because I just listened to that. I heard it. Okay, if I want it badly enough, I can get it.
I'll get it. Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking about traveling, there is no excuse. I mean, if you're new to traveling, I personally think a great way to start is a cruise. I love
Yeah.
I love cruises. And cruises are pretty inexpensive. Because you can get everything in a little package. I remember the first cruise I went on, I went to this travel agent. I said, look, I'm single. I just got divorced. I said, I'm single. I want to go on a cruise. I want to save money. I want cheap. And she says, well, do you mind sharing a room with other people? I said, not a problem. It's cheap. I'll be there.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I went on this cruise and I shared a room with three other guys. And I spent 7 days on a cruise, flight from Houston to Miami to take the cruise, 7 days. I spent less than $600.
Exactly. Exactly.
I spent less than
Exactly.
$600.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking everything, flights, food, souvenir, whatever. $600 for a 7 day cruise. But again, I was willing to share a room with three people. And most people may not be comfortable with that. Me, I don't have a problem with it. But there's always ways to save. You know,
Always.
do a little homework. There's Google Travel. There's all these different price line, and just do your homework, right?
And to add to that, Michael, there are so many. We talk about the Black travel movement within travel spaces, and a lot of people contributed to sort of kicking off around 2010. Um, but you know, I would say my mother did not grow up with access to the Black travel communities that I have grown up with. You go on Facebook and you put in Black travel, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of travel groups with Black people from all across the world who are sharing information, giving tips, giving resources, traveling together. There are so many Black travel agencies that exist today. You go on Instagram, there's a ton of them. So there, to your point, there's really not any excuse for lack of information. It's really just will. All of the information is out there. All of the resources are out there to travel any way that you deem, be it budget friendly, adventure travel, nature travel. I could shout out dozens and dozens of Black entrepreneurs who have created amazing Black travel businesses to support our community and just getting out there. If you're a Black woman, you just want to travel women, that exists. If you're a Black man, that exists. If you're gay and you just want to travel with your community, that exists. All of these communities exist.
Absolutely.
And so it takes getting out there and doing the research.
Yeah, and speaking of Black travel movement, there's a Black travel movement on Facebook that I'm a part of, and it's amazing.
Right?
Amazing. I mean, because one of the requirements is if you're going to post pictures, you also have to give a kind of description, what you like, what you didn't like, and man, just the feedback that you get, from people that are traveling different places. Like I said, there's groups where the guy that set up the site, he meets with people from around the globe. They'll meet together, Black travel movement. They'll have the t-shirts on and they'll go to all these exotic places with Black folk. Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, with that being said, I do want to ask, what would be one of your pleasant surprises, somewhere that you went to, maybe didn't think it might be as cool, but when you got there, you was like, dang, this is it. What would be a place would be like that?
Man, that's a really good question. Oh, whenever I accept these interviews, I'm always like, man, I'm probably gonna ask the same questions about travel, but I've never been asked that question, that is a really, really good one. I would have to say, man, that is a good one. I'm trying to give me a minute there. You know what? I traveled with a buddy about 2 years ago. We traveled through the Middle East, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel.
Wow.
And Palestine surprised me.
Interesting.
Palestine surprised me. I and to be fair, it wasn't a big party, even though I did get a chance to attend a festival there, which was really, really cool. But what I expected to see a downtrodden community. And do not get me wrong, there are issues there. But what I saw in the faces of those people and in their spirits was joy and optimism and perseverance and resilience.
Wow.
I saw us. And I saw artistry, I saw creativity, I saw fight, and I saw this spirit of no matter what you do to us, we ain't going nowhere.
Got it.
And when I saw that, and again, I was like, oh my gosh, so inspiring, inspiring. And when I saw that, I said, you know what? That reminds me of us. And then when I talked to them, they confirmed it.
Oh, wow.
We learned from you all.
Ah.
Your fight, your resilience, your determination. Keep going. Don't let them take you down. We learned that from Black Americans. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou. We learned that from you all. I didn't expect that.
Wow.
I did not expect it, man. It just mind blowing. It's even thinking about it still right now, man. It was so beautiful and uplifting to see.
Well, for me, my wife, like I said, she's an adventurer.
Uh-huh.
And I have no idea why she wanted to do this, but she said, babe, we need to spend the night in an ice hotel.
Ice Hotel, tell me more.
An ice hotel. Everything is made out of ice. Now, I'm from Corpus Christi, right? On the coast. Cold weather is not really my thing. But I said, babe, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting. So I did some research and I found this ice hotel in Norway. Well, we were going to make reservations, but that was right before COVID hit. So then we got canceled. We didn't get a chance to go to Norway because I wanted to go to Norway because I want to see the Northern Lights, right? And there's ice hotel. Well, it turns out there was a ice hotel in Quebec, Canada. So we go to Quebec, Canada, to this ice hotel. Once again, I'm not a cold weather dude, but I'll take one for the team. you know, well, like I said, my wife's adventure. I said, look, let's do it, baby. Let's do it. So the hotels, again, completely made out of ice. You sleep on a bed of ice. Each room has unique carvings and stuff inside the room, and there's different themes of the rooms. Like there was a Las Vegas room, and there was a honeymoon suite. There was different themes.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely beautiful. I mean, it was just mind-boggling. And what they do is every year they start in like September, October, and they start building these structures. And then by March, they melt them all down and start all over.
Oh, wow.
But I my first thought was, okay, so the main thing I want to do is, and here's what's unique about it is you have the ice hotel, but you're about 100 yards from a regular hotel. So you have a room in the regular hotel. If for whatever reason you're uncomfortable spending the
Comfortable.
night, you can go in there and get in your heated room, right? I said, nah, I got this. I got this. So I'm thinking, I'm gonna bundle up, jump in the sleeping bag, and be cool. And the guy says, look, don't bundle up. He says, you got to trust me. He says, all you got to do, get in the sleeping bag. Don't wear a jacket, wear your shirt or whatever, and just zip up. And they have those Arctic sleeping bags. And because the room is about 10 degrees.
I was gonna ask, how cold?
Yeah, the rooms are about 10 degrees. But you get in that sleeping bag, you're sleeping on the bag of ice again. And I was afraid I was going to freeze, but I was all zipped up. I had to literally unzip it because it got warm inside the freaking sleeping
Wow.
bag. And so I slept great. It was an amazing experience. But again, I never would have thought I would have enjoyed sleeping in a nice hotel. But it turned out to be just an amazing, amazing experience.
Ice hotel. Man, what a that's I cannot I probably could not. Oh my gosh, yo, that is
Yeah, it was different. So as we wind down, I now want to give an opportunity, first of all, to share how people can contact you to learn about your magazine and wherever they can find you.
absolutely. So on Instagram, we are Culture Travels at Culture Travels Mag. Um, you can also visit our website, culturetravels.co, not .com, .co. Um, and then you can also reach me at Leroy at culturetravels.co. And we'll be, if you are in San Antonio, obviously, I'm based out of here when I'm not traveling. But if you are in Florida, if you are in New York, Texas, I have one more city on there. Either way, over the next couple of months, we'll be traveling to New York, Florida. Um, there was one more city, Richmond, I believe it is as well, for different projects. So I always like to tell people, reach out. If I'm coming through your city, please don't hesitate to reach out. We always share where we're going and what we're doing, as far as our team goes and as far as I go, on our website, on our social media pages as well. So if we're ever in one of your cities, please don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to connect with you and chat with you and learn more about you and your city.
So your team is traveling around to different places for the magazine, to go to these locations and write about it. And is that
Sir.
kind of
Yes,
okay?
sir.
Nice, nice. All right. So as we close out, I want to give you an opportunity to share your final thoughts, whatever's on your heart to share.
I'll share one quick story, and it has to do with the last question you asked about um, going to a place and not expecting something. And this story, I think for me, really sort of defines what travel is. It's also in Ethiopia in a city called Aksum, very religious city. And I kept hearing about the Ark of the Covenant and the Ten Commandments. And I thought it was all hoopla. I thought it was all in terms of that, in terms of it literally being in Ethiopia. I said, oh, it's what a great legend. And there's a holiday called the Return of Mary, Saint Mary, every
Mm.
November. And people from all over the world, descend into Axel for this holiday in order to visit the church where it is believed that the Ten Commandments are held. Michael, I have never in my life seen such devotion
Mm.
to one's belief. When I say Ethiopians and people who share this belief for, I'm talking thousands of people trying to cram into this one church, kissing the walls, putting their face up on the wall to feel that love and that grace.
Wow.
Sleeping. You talk about sleeping on a block of ice. I didn't do that, but we were wrapped up together in our gabis, which are essentially like blankets, and everyone slept outside on the ground just to be near the church. And I'm talking about people from all walks of life, backgrounds, culture, colors, etc. And I was, for me, it taught me and informed me and showed me what an idea can do for people, what a belief can do for people in terms of bringing people together and connecting people, and what real true devotion looks like. And so I tell people, I'll leave everyone with this: travel. Just travel. Traveling is freedom. That is the message of Culture Travels. And we live that belief, that idea, through 5 core beliefs. The world is interconnected. Travel is transformative. Cultural appreciation is how we build bridges. You have the power. Everyone has the power to influence. Every single person has the power to influence a place, a culture, and a people. You just have to get out there and see it. And the last one, travel is freedom. It is the freedom to think differently. It is the freedom to believe differently, to act differently, to release whatever psychological and physical shackles that we think are holding us back from who we truly are. Traveling is freedom. Do not put any blocks in your way. Do not build any barriers that will prevent you from being able to do that. If you need information, if you need a resource, email me. Hit us up, hit me up. I will connect you to the people. I will give you as much information as possible, because we want everybody to travel, because that is the true essence of freedom.
Man, I love that. And so I just want to say, the reason I love doing this show is I love having these types of conversations with people like yourself. When I launched the Shatter The Stereotypes movement, the intention was simple. I want to showcase brothers who are doing remarkable things. And I say you're doing remarkable things.
Thank you very much.
And I think we have to be open-minded enough that we're expanding our understanding of the world. And don't just live, because, America, and of course, if you pay attention to mainstream media, it's only going to give you a small snapshot of what's really going on in the world anyway. Yes. But especially as Black folk, again, I recognize all the challenges. We know all the racial stuff that's going on, but again, I'm an optimist, and I believe, just as my mother said, if you want something badly enough, no one can keep you from attaining it except yourself. So simply choose to travel somewhere. just make it. And again, I know there's a lot of pieces to it. Some people are just terrified of getting on a plane. Some people are terrified of getting on the boat. Trip. I'm sorry?
A little road trip.
Yeah, exactly. Take a road trip, but just don't stay in your one little community. Exactly. Expose yourself to, that's what I love about Houston, Texas. In Houston, I can go from Chinatown to Russian town to Germantown, and I can intermingle with all these different cultures and their foods, and talk to different people from around the globe with their culture. And I love that. And so we just have to kind of open our minds and know that travel is freedom. Yeah, thank you for that, because that's what it is. Travel is freedom. So, with that being said, Leroy, thank you so much for spending an hour with us here on Shatter The Stereotypes. It has been my absolute joy and play. We're going to have to do this again, because like I said, I love talking about travel. So again, thank you for who you are as a dude. And again, I love your writing. I love your style of writing. You're excellent at it. So this has been another episode of Shatter The Stereotypes, and I'm going to close with travel is freedom.
Thank you.
We'll see you next episode. Take care.
Everybody.